you are your most important asset. So in terms of importance, there's not a more important thing to insure than yourself and your ability to get up and go earn an income.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients podcast, sponsored by Dental Intel, Cloud Dentistry, and the Doc Sites. So as I always have been saying, please check out those companies, see what they can offer you. They're one of the reasons why I'm able to do this on a weekly basis. So thank you to those sponsors. Please welcome to the Raving Patients podcast, Edward Dennis. Edward, thanks for joining me today.
Hey there. Good afternoon, Lynn. I appreciate you having me.
So for those that, don't know or don't plan or don't have any knowledge about financial stuff related to their practice, can you kind of let people know a little bit about you, what you do, and how you help dental practices?
Yeah, Lynn. So I'm a financial advisor and I specialize in the dental market. So I'm very blessed to work with, your colleagues and your peer professionals. I do a lot of speaking engagements. So typically where I obtain and acquire a lot of my clients are through dental schools and residency programs. I'll go and I'll speak and I'll provide, lunch and provide topics and education around financial literacy. I always say these schools do a great job of, educating them to be the best practitioners, but there's often that gap around, financial planning as they transition from residency or school to practice. So I've got a lot of experience. I go and fly and do different schools all over the country. I go to different expos and events. Like you said, we met at the FTC conference. I was at AAO. We were just up in Michigan for the GORP, National Orthodontic Conference. So this is my world. This is what I eat, breathe, sleep. And again, very blessed and fortunate to kind of call the dental market, my home base.
It's interesting. You made a comment that dentists are trained really well in dentistry, but they know very little about the business side of dentistry because we don't get any training on it. And I actually was very fortunate. My dad kind of gave me my training in it because my dad was very into business. He was very into disability insurance. My dad, unfortunately, was partially disabled since 1992 when he developed cancer. So he had his disability policies paying him, I think it was about $12,000 a month for life, because he became partially disabled and was only able to work part-time until he unfortunately passed away. But so I was very familiar with it. In fact, if you remember our conversation, I told you all things and you said, well, the typical dentist doesn't know these things. I'm very well versed in these topics. So I'm excited to discuss some of these and kind of teach the audiences. But yes, the typical dentist comes out of dental school with a ton of debt. They have a little bit of money, very little money, and they have to plan properly in order to set themselves up for years to come. So I think the most important thing I want to get into first is disability insurance, because it's one of those things that gets a lot of, I don't want to say there's not a lot of controversy around it. I think a lot of people don't know. They don't know all the aspects of disability insurance, such as how much should they get? Obviously, you're limited based on your income, the cost of living adjustments. How often do you automatically ask for more money? So can you touch base on some of these topics? Talk about there's also something related to, if you can work in another industry. There's all these clauses you have to be aware of. So can you, touch base on the basics of disability insurance? What a dentist should look for? What are some of the pitfalls dealing with dental, disability insurance?
Yeah. So, like you said, the interesting conversation that you and I had, I told you come and work with me as a financial advisor and sell disability insurance. I think you know more about disability than some even advisors do who are educating clients. So you are certainly well versed, and it was just funny having that conversation because that is not how it typically goes, right? Most clients, and even clients that we have a conversation and annual review, and then the next year, that's why it's important to kind of revisit the policies and go through the coverages again, because you kind of have that meeting and then you forget about it 2 weeks later. And so the interesting thing about disability insurance for dentists is I think that the doctors themselves, they don't know a lot about the coverages. All they know is they need to get it, right? So they come out of school and they know they need to get it. And that's where, it's for me, it's not really about selling the product. It's more about educating on the product. Because again, they come out, they're talking to their friends and faculty. And like I said, it's just part of the process that, it's the same way they get malpractice. And so, one of the things that I really pride myself on is being someone who can, in layman's terms, simplify the language and really let them know what are the finer points, what are the key features or riders, as they're called, they want to look out for. And so the first things first, and you mentioned the ability to go work in another occupation. So The terminology is true own occupation. That is what every dental professional absolutely must have on their policy. And again, to kind of break that down and simplify, what that means is that because dental professionals, their jobs are so specialized, right? If I, break my arm, I can still sit here and have this podcast conversation with you and talk with docs about DI or life insurance or 401k, what have you. You break your arm, you're unable to practice, right? And so having that language of true own occupation basically says if you can't do the substantial material duties of your job, of your occupation, but you can go work in another capacity, work with me as a financial advisor, go back to your school and teach. So a lot of faculty are actually former practitioners who are on disability. And so what that does is it protects you of your own occupation as a dentist, as a periodontist, as an endodontist, and allows you to collect full disability benefits and go work and produce an income in a new job, even within dentistry or even within a hospital as a medical doctor. So that's one of the first things that you're going to want to look for is that definition of true own occupation. In terms of coverages that the amount of coverage, so that's kind of a question always is like, how much can I, if I want to buy $20,000 of coverage, can I do that? And it doesn't work quite that way, right? So there is a financial underwriting component where you've got to show your financials with, a contract, pay stubs, tax returns. And generally speaking, you're going to qualify for roughly 50 to 60% of your income. The reason why it's in that bracket is that they don't want Dr. Len, right, where you're potentially making more money on disability than you are practicing. We call that moral hazard, right? So it's going to be around 50 to 60%. The benefits, generally speaking, are going to be paid tax-free. And so the taxable equivalent, actually, when you break it down that way, it actually gets much closer to, what you're actually earning from an income potential. Another key feature is, and when I sit down with my clients, I say, we're going to do the medical underwriting one time and one time only. And what I mean by that is these policies have features that allow you to increase your coverage as time goes by and as your income grows without having to go back through medical underwriting. And so I share a story, of a real life example with in my presentation when I speak to residencies and dental schools. I have a client, he's a prosthodontist, and we did his disability insurance for him in his fourth year of dental school. He fractured his wrist, ultimate frisbee his first year of residency. When we had our annual review, we're talking about that. And again, the benefit of that, the ability to increase is as long as you have the insurance, the coverage prior to the injury or whatever ailment, illness, injury, whatever that happens, as long as the coverage is in there before, then whatever happens to you in the future, break a wrist, develop an illness, cancer, diabetes, whatever the case may be, you're locked in your health today. So the younger you are, the healthier you are, generally speaking, the best it is to kind of get that coverage. Because again, once you have it locked in, you're locking in your coverage and your ability to increase as your income grows without having to go back through that underwriting process, which is, very, very, very important.
What about cost of living adjustments?
That's another feature that can be added to the policy. We call it COLA. And especially given, times where high inflationary periods right now, the idea there is the same way you would hopefully be making more money in your career as practicing. When your benefits kick in, you can add a feature, and I would say it's on 99.9% of my policies with my clients, is that features on there. It can be a 3% or 6% compound raise on those benefits if you do become disabled to help you keep pace with inflation.
Gotcha. And, people always say that, they feel insurance is a waste because they very rarely use it. I've spoken to dentists before and they don't want to get disability insurance because they think it's going to cost them way too much money and they're healthy. They're not going to benefit from it. Can you speak to that for a moment about what your feelings are when it comes to that?
I always say, like, what do you insure, right? You insure your home, you insure your auto. If you got a boat, you insure that. If you got a nice wedding ring, you insure that. But you are your most important asset, right? And so if you had an ATM around the corner that was printing money for you, I would like to think that you would want to insure that, right? And not to dumb it down where you're a walking ATM, but you kind of are. And so your ability to get up every day and go earn an income that's more valuable than any of those other assets that I just mentioned. So in terms of importance, there's not a more important thing to insure than yourself and your ability to get up and go earn an income. And then for those of you who are, if you're an independent contractor and you own your own entity, file as an S corp, if you own your own practice, then it becomes a deductible expense, and so it becomes even more of a reason to kind of have it. But look, it's insurance, and it's one of those things where you may never use it, right? And you mentioned, you didn't, but it's one of those things where if something did happen, you're sure as hell going to wish that you had gotten that coverage and were protected.
Yeah, 100%. So I agree with that completely. I was always a little bit overweight, and they put a rider based on my weight. And I had, it's funny, my wife was a chiropractor. And I've been to chiropractors before, and they put a rider on my neck. So if I ever was injured with a neck injury, there would be certain restrictions on the type of disability or how much I would be able to receive. So it's really interesting to see how these companies operate, but they're obviously bean counters, and they do it because they have to mitigate the risk that they have.
Yeah. And to that point, Lynn, that's something else too. Like disability insurance is a little bit of a science, a little bit of an art where, it's not everybody's different, right? Everybody's health is different. And so, fortunately, I've got a lot of experience in doing this, and, with my firm, we're licensed with all of the carriers. And so it's not uncommon for me to submit multiple applications and kind of leverage carriers against each other to make sure that we're minimizing whatever exclusions, may pop up. So, again, that's where, working with a professional who has experience and has a level of expertise in working down and navigating those roads, becomes very important.
Anything else on disability insurance before we move to the next topic?
I think that covers it. I would just say that, these coverages, you go back to like, why does it make sense? These coverages can equate to millions of dollars over the course of one's career if something were to happen to you. So again, I would just have you, think long and hard. And if you don't have coverage, for whatever reason, it would be something to at least kind of understand. And again, these policies can be customized and, reduce benefits, reduce, period of time that the coverage lasts. If it's a cost thing, it's not a one size fits all. So there's ways that the coverage can be implemented that, kind of fits within a budget if that's something that's of concern.
Perfect. Can you, I want to move to the next topic. Can you talk about or touch base on what you wanted to refer to, what we're referring to as buy-sell planning?
So buy-sell planning is a concept that may or may not be understood by a lot of. Now, this comes into play when we have partners. So we have a lot of practices that there's multiple owners and multiple partners, and this is a concept where I think is often overlooked. And so it's really incumbent upon either the attorney that you're working with, that's drafting operating agreements to make sure that language is written in there, or the financial advisor to make sure that they're at least bringing the topic up. And oftentimes what I've seen is that there'll be language in there, right? So if Len, you and I are partners in a practice, and there may be language that says, hey, if upon my death, then, the 50% or a dollar amount, whatever the practice is valued, would be paid out to the practice to my spouse, right? But oftentimes it's like, where's that money coming from, right? So if you and I are partners and I pass away, now all of a sudden, Lynn, you're business partners with my wife, right? And she doesn't know the first thing about dentistry, and you don't, have maybe the working relationship, and that was never what either of you guys signed up for. So you would be happier to become just the sole owner. She would be happier to just be paid out, right? And so, what happens with these buy-sell agreements is, so sometimes they may be drafted and the practice is valued at $1 million. It just says, hey, Lynn will buy my spouse and my estate out at half of that, 500,000, and all parties, are satisfied and happy. But again, if it is drafted but unfunded, that creates a significant problem again to say, where does that money come from? So having a buy-sell agreement in place and drafted is important, number one, but then also funded, and that's funded, Lynn, through life insurance. It's a full deductible expense. The practice owns the coverage, and it protects everybody, all parties, the surviving partner, the estate of the one who passed away. It's a deductible business expense. And again, in terms of just really having the operating agreement, the buy-sell agreement, and everything about your practice and partnership, tightened up, I's dotted and T's crossed, having the buy-sell plan, the agreement in place, but also funded is very important. And again, those that are listening, if you've got a partnership and you don't have, those ducks in a row, it's definitely something that you want to look into.
Gotcha. And that's more so for a partnership agreement when you're dealing with partnerships. If you're a solo practitioner, that's not going to come into play all that much.
Correct. Yeah, it's not going to be something that would be necessary for a sole practitioner. This is going to be absolutely something that's going to be more involved when there's at least, two partners involved in a ownership equity of a practice.
So moving on to the next topic, I wanted to talk about the Roth strategies, the Roth IRA, backdoor Roth IRA strategies, because obviously we need to be putting our money in some places, whether it's a 401k, a Roth IRA, a SEP IRA. There's so many different places you can put the funds. So talk about the backdoor Roth IRA strategy.
This has been a strategy that I'm proud to say. I mean, the number of referrals from clients, doctors to doctors that I've gotten just from this strategy alone has been, quite incredible. So everybody knows 401k. Depending on your entity, SEP IRA, like you said, is another window. But there's a big misconception and everybody should know a Roth IRA, at least be aware of the vehicle, right? But the biggest misconception with a Roth IRA is that these doctors make too much money to contribute to a Roth IRA, which, while technically letter of the law, that is true. So if you make more than $144,000 filing single or $214,000 filing joint, you do phase out of eligibility, which is, pretty much all doctors, right, are above those brackets. You do phase out of eligibility. So when you're talking to friends at the bar or your family at, Thanksgiving dinner table or whatever, they're like, oh, but Len, you make too much money and, you can't contribute to a Roth. So, and again, like I said, that's true. However, the loophole or the workaround is the backdoor strategy. And that is it's simply opening up an additional IRA, a traditional IRA. And the way that it works is you make your contribution, which for this year, the maximum is $6,000. If 50 or older, you can contribute to $7,000, the catch-up provision. But you make your contribution to the traditional IRA and then submit one document that then converts it from the traditional to the Roth, right? And that is, in a sense, the loophole. The traditional IRA is there as a simple flow-through account. And the reason why you want to do this is that, again, now $6,000 a year is never going to be enough for any of my doctors to retire on, or any doctor for that matter, to comfortably retire on. But again, the benefits that you get with a Roth IRA from the tax deferred growth, which is the same as a 401k or SEP, traditional IRA. But the kicker and the biggest difference in why the Roth IRA and why the IRS has these provisions that don't allow, contributions and phase out eligibility and things like that is because all of the gains at distribution are tax free. And so again, it is a wash, rinse, repeat every year. And that maximum will increase. I think 2 or 3 years ago was 5,500. And so every year you want to just keep on 6,000, 6,000, 6,000, 6,000. And as the income, as the limit increases, just maxing that out. And, when you turn 60 or 65 or 70 and you're ready to start taking distributions, the idea is you've got a nice, healthy sum of money in there that is all tax free. And so again, just being aware of it, being aware that even though you are in the higher income bracket and you are ineligible, technically, yes, to participate, that there is a way. And again, it's just one extra step. And everybody, all doctors listening, your spouses. I mean, this is something that all individuals should be taking advantage of.
Perfect. That's great. So let's talk about other options. So there's an office, and I'll use my office as an example. I sold my office to my associate. I had an existing 401k plan that came to an end when I sold the practice, and the corporation I still kept the corporation. She bought the practice itself. When she bought, she was not ready to have an IRA, a 401k established. So my employees had to kind of move their money into another location. So just for people who are in that similar situation, can you talk about some of the strategies when something like that occurs?
Yeah, that's not a way to endear yourself to the employees to come in and start dropping benefits, right? So, what I have heard, and you've probably heard this talking to your peers, in terms of the difficulty, hiring, staffing and retaining employees, it's a challenge out there. And I've got docs who are starting up practices that are looking on Indeed, and you've got people that are, no show, no calls for interviews. It's just like mind boggling. They take the time to put their stuff out there and, schedule an interview and then, goes. So, having your practice offer benefits, whether it be, group 401k with a match, as well as medical, vision, short-term disability, life insurance, those ancillary benefits. Those are ways that you can, it's going to help you recruit. So, and really just differentiate your practice from maybe the neighboring practice or another practice, when you're looking to bring on good talent. So, that's something that, I love working with my practice owners, because again, it opens the door for so much broader, planning. And again, there are tax credits associated with 401ks that make it, just a no-brainer, to establish and set that up. And then again, all of these deductions, all of these expenses, the contributions, for the match, the contributions towards the health insurance, those are all deductible expenses. So again, from a business standpoint, there are some benefits there that you can leverage. But the key is, again, having good talent, keeping good talent, rewarding employees. And those are, some areas of benefits that you can provide that, I've got a lot of experience working and helping my clients with.
That's great. So, one of the struggles that I think people have is there's so many people, so many sharks, we'll call them, circling when it comes to working with dentists, because they know that a lot of dentists aren't the best business people. They obviously they make a nice living. They are not because they're not so shrewd, they don't know where the money's, what the best investment strategies are. So how do you know, or how does a dentist know who to work with? I mean, is it solely based on recommendations? How do you know you're actually getting really good advice? Because I'm sure there's different investment strategies that people, like, and then you go to someone else and they say, well, I don't like that method of investing, such as buying whole life insurance and using that as an investment strategy. So I know that's somewhat of a controversial topic. So how do you know you are with the right financial team? Obviously, you see your portfolio increasing. Okay. So now, it's probably down now because of the way the market was, but you see your portfolio increasing year over year over year. And I think they say your money should double every 7 to 10 years, I think is what the numbers show. So, how do you know you're really with the right financial team?
Yeah. So I love that question. And I use that same analogy, Lynn. Sharks are swimming at, down here in our backyard at Nova or UF or Harvard, SLU, all of these different dental programs and schools and residencies all over the country. And I think, you can sniff out, at least from the financial advisor, you can sniff out relatively quickly if they're faking it in terms of being in the dental space or if they truly are, right? And one of the benefits with me in terms of, being in this space for the last 7+ years, 8 years, is that, I don't know, when I meet with the client, I always say my lanes are insurance and investments. Those are the two areas of expertise, what I specialize in, how I provide for my family, get compensated, et cetera, right? But you're as a practitioner, and especially if owning a practice and running a practice is going to be the ultimate goal, there are other professionals that have niche expertise in their fields that you also want to be partnered with, right? And so I say that, I like to act as a financial quarterback, where again, those are the two things. I get zero kickbacks, zero referral fees or anything like that. I always make that very clear. And it's not to say that any of my clients have to work with a CPA that I recommend or a banker that I recommend. But at the very least, I'm going to be able to set up and make an introduction so that they can have a conversation with someone who's been vetted and also specializes in the dental space. And so a few different professionals that I would recommend all dental professionals kind of have in their corner in the Rolodex would be, a financial advisor, certainly, someone helping them with their insurance or their investments, an attorney, someone who's going to be assisting with whether it be contract reviews as an associate, contract reviews for a partnership agreement, or buying a practice and setting up an operating agreement for their own clinic. So an attorney, a CPA, an accountant, someone who's going to be assisting with, payroll, and just has a sharp pencil and making sure that, there more money is going to their bottom line and less to Uncle Sam. And then the banking institutions, right? So having individuals that, for example, doctors, most of them are aware of like the doctor loan program for purchasing a home. You can put as little as like 0% down and avoid PMI, where myself, attorneys don't have that same privilege. Bankers in the practice lending space, because those guys are going to be very good in terms of assisting the, whether it be demographic studies, and just, for those of you that are looking to, different markets and just helping you better educate and understand what that process looks like. And then, of course, practice brokers, practice transition solutions, those type of professionals. And again, those are all professionals, Lynn, that are at the same conferences that I'm up at FDC. And, I'm fortunate to have some really strong relationships within that space that, again, by no means are they required to work with those individuals, but at the very least, I'm able and blessed to make those introductions, and then they make that decision as to whether or not to proceed in working with them or going elsewhere.
Perfect. I'm going to put you on the spot here. I have one question, which I want to end the content part of the podcast with, before we get into the Q&A that I like to do. If there's one thing that every dentist should have, in their financial portfolio, what should that be?
One thing they should have, it probably would go back to our very first topic, Lynn, disability insurance, because again, these individuals, they go to undergrad, they go to dental school, some pursue residency, all to, of course, there's a love for the job, the passion for the role, and the helping in teeth, getting in teeth and working with patients, et cetera. But again, it's also to earn a significant income. And all of those plans can be derailed quickly and easily with, an illness, an injury, something to that effect. And so again, protecting the investment that you've made in yourself, the time that you put into your career, I think is paramount in terms of importance.
So we're going to start the Q&A part of the session. For those that haven't heard this before, I'm going to ask Edward just about 8 to 10 questions. He's going to answer them quickly, easily. You don't have to go into long, drawn-out answers. So this is a deck called Pod Decks, and this is a topic called The Hustle. It's all about business stuff. So first question, what have you learned from the most successful person you know?
Sticking true to your morals and doing what's right by the client is of the utmost importance.
Okay.
Quick like that.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. Just like that. Very, very fast.
All right. So yeah, dollars aside, it's always, it's in it for the long game, and doing what's right by the client, patient, what have you is rule number one.
Okay. If you lost everything you worked for tomorrow, what would be your first step in starting over?
Reaching out to my network of individuals, family, friends, and understanding what opportunities there might be to tap into something and provide some value.
What is one skill or trait that you feel is imperative to be successful?
Communication.
How do you get your ideas or concepts for your business?
A lot of self-study, I would say. Other resources out there. We have a business resource center that puts out content a lot, webinars and things like that. So I always say I'm a student of the game, and I'm always trying to sharpen my skill set and just, a lot of self-study. And Lynn's podcast.
If you had a magic stick, what are the 3 things you would change in the world right now?
I think the first thing would be around just general nicety, people being good to each other, being peaceful, and, eliminating all of the hate there is, whether it be verbal, whether it be physical. So I think just, world peace, I guess, for a lack of,
that works. World peace is good. What else?
A hunger, ending that as well. I think, going to sleep with a full belly would be the other thing that's important.
What distracts you the most every day?
Probably just constant communication coming into my phone, text messages and emails, just all day, nonstop. And yeah.
Okay. Describe Mondays for you in one word.
Tone setter.
Okay. Have you ever turned down a client?
Absolutely.
For what reason?
So I'm fortunate to be with a little bit of success. I can be a little bit more the same way clients can choose their advisor. I now have the ability where, you start in this business as a young advisor, you're kind of taking any client that you can get, right? You're trying to build your business. Whereas now, I have the ability to turn down a client. And the reasons typically fall upon, like just expectations, where their expectations of what they think they're going to get or what they're going to do, and the communication style just starts off kind of rocky. And I just will tell them, hey, I think you're going to be better suited to go a different direction.
Perfect. And last but not least, what book has made the greatest impact on you, and what book do you recommend others read as well? So it's probably the same book.
I would say, for the sake of just, this might be an easy or a common answer, Rich Dad Poor Dad. So that was a book that my parents gave me back when I was in high school and read that. And so that was a book that I read that is very popular. I'm sure most of your audience has heard about it. It just got some really good messaging in it that anybody that picked it up and read it would certainly, I think, benefit from. So that would probably be the book that's had the most impact and what I recommend.
It's interesting. I just had a conversation with an investment guy today that I know from Philadelphia, and he mentioned that book today to me, which I have. It's on my bookshelf. But it's funny. He highly recommends people read that as well. So, all right, Edward, what's the best way for someone to reach out to you to get more information about how you can help them?
The two best forms of contact or reaching out to me is going to be through email or phone. So my direct cell is 678-873-0573. Again, that number is 678-873-0573. Staying true to my Atlanta, Georgia roots with that. And then my email is my first name _ last name at NPC Financial. So that's Edward _ Dennis, DENNIS at NPCfinancial.com.
Great. So this was a blast. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with the audience. Guys, if you liked the episode, please share it. Please go on to iTunes or any of these other podcast programs and review us, like us, subscribe. It's really important to grow this audience. And check out the sponsors, like I said, Dental and Tel, the doc sites, and Cloud Dentistry. I couldn't do without them. And Edward, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And as I always end these podcasts, remember, your reputation matters. Until the next episode, we'll talk to everyone soon.